June 2023. Godwin Emefiele was arrested by operatives of the Department of State Services, not the EFCC, not the police, state security. Now the end part will expose to you a lot you really don't know. For a man who had just spent 9 years as the governor of Nigeria's central bank, the institution responsible for every naira in circulation, every interest rate decision, every monetary policy that touched every Nigerian's wallet, this was a moment that stopped the country. He was removed from office, detained, and eventually handed over to the EFCC for prosecution. What followed was one of the most complex, most delayed, and most revealing financial crime trials in Nigerian history. This is the full story. Godwin Emefiele was born in Delta State. He built a career in banking, rising through the ranks at Zenith Bank to become its group managing director and CEO in 2010. In 2014, President Goodluck Jonathan appointed him as the 10th governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. President Buhari retained him. He served 2 5-year terms, from 2014 to 2023. For nearly a decade, Emefiele was the most powerful, unelected economic figure in Africa's largest economy. He managed Nigeria's foreign reserves. He controlled the official exchange rate. He oversaw the naira redesign policy that caused a nationwide cash crisis in early 2023. Queues at ATMs, bank branches overwhelmed, businesses unable to function. That policy, and the controversy around its timing just weeks before a presidential election, is part of what brought intense scrutiny to his tenure. Then came the arrest. Then came the charges. To understand why this case matters so much, you need to understand what the CBN governor actually does. The Central Bank of Nigeria is not just a bank. It is the institution that issues the naira, that regulates every commercial bank operating in the country, that manages Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves, that sets the monetary policy rate, the interest rate that determines how expensive or cheap it is to borrow money in Nigeria. When the MPR goes up, loans become more expensive. Businesses borrow less. Growth slows. When it goes down, credit loosens. Spending increases. Every Nigerian, whether they know it or not, lives inside decisions made by the CBN governor. The position carries almost unparalleled economic power, which is why the charges against Emefiele are not just about money. They are about what happens when that kind of power operates without accountability. Now understand this very clear. The EFCC is prosecuting Godwin Emefiele on a 20-count amended charge, case number FCT/HC/CR/577/2023, before Justice Hamza Muazu at the FCT High Court in Maitama, Abuja. The charges include criminal breach of trust, forgery, abuse of office, conspiracy to obtain by false pretense, obtaining money by false pretense, procurement fraud. Let's break down what they actually allege. The first major allegation, procurement fraud totaling approximately 1.2 billion naira, involving 2 companies, April 1616 Nigeria Limited and Architecon Nigeria Limited. The EFCC alleges that Emefiele conferred corrupt advantages on these companies, giving them access to CBN contracts in ways that violated proper procurement processes. A former CBN head of procurement testified in court that bidding information for CBN contracts was leaked to one Saadatu Ramalan Yaro, described as an associate of Emefiele, and to April 1616 Investment Limited. The alleged corrupt transactions took place between 2018 and 2020. The second major allegation, and the one that carries the largest single dollar figure, involves $6.23 million. The EFCC alleges that in 2023, shortly before the general elections, $6,230,000 was withdrawn from the CBN vault in Abuja, under the guise of paying fictitious foreign election observers. The election observers, according to the prosecution, did not exist. The money was withdrawn anyway. Emefiele has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Cases like this don't rest on accusations alone. The EFCC has presented 12 prosecution witnesses so far, and the evidence they've introduced into court tells a detailed story. The 12th prosecution witness, EFCC investigator David Jayoba, testified that investigations traced $2.045 million in recovered cash, along with multiple properties and title documents, back through a chain of transactions linked to approvals made during Emefiele's tenure. Documents tendered in court included internal CBN memoranda approving payments to Architecon Nigeria Limited for renovation of the CBN governor's official residence in Ikoyi, Lagos, payments for office furniture, dedicated power lines, landscaping. Bank records from Zenith Bank were admitted, showing specific debit entries and account transactions. Properties and title documents were recovered from Zenith Bank's headquarters in Lagos during the investigation. The witness testified that when investigators found cash in the possession of one Omeke, that individual stated the cash had been sent to him by one Eric Ocheme Udo on behalf of the defendant, and that part of the funds had been used for renovation of Emefiele's assets. That is the prosecution's trail, a chain of internal approvals, bank records, property transactions, and recovered cash, all allegedly linking back to the former governor's decisions. Emefiele's defense team has pushed back, arguing that the evidence shows repetition and inconsistency, and noting that Emefiele was not listed as a signatory, director, or shareholder of either April 1616 or Architecon. But perhaps the most explosive single piece of testimony in this entire trial came from a commissioner of police. The officer, who led the police team attached to the special investigation panel that probed the CBN under Emefiele, testified before the court. His testimony: the signatures of two individuals were forged to execute the alleged $6.23 million withdrawal. Those two individuals were the late President Muhammadu Buhari and former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. Let that land for a moment. The allegation is not just that money was stolen from the CBN. The allegation is that the signatures of a sitting president and a sitting SGF were forged on documents authorizing a $6.23 million cash withdrawal from Nigeria's central bank. The witness did not directly link Emefiele to the forgery at the time the court adjourned. The trial continues. But if proven, this is not just financial crime. This is document fraud at the highest level of the Nigerian state. This case is not moving quickly, and that itself has become part of the story. The EFCC has been granted 8 adjournments during this trial, exceeding the statutory limit of 5 set by the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. In March 2026, the court ran out of patience. The EFCC failed to produce its 13th prosecution witness, Deputy Commissioner of Police Eloho Edwin Okpoziakio, who was scheduled to testify about the $6.23 million cash withdrawal. The reason given? The officer was attending a personal legal matter in another court, where a garnishee order had been placed on his own bank account. Justice Hamza Muazu had heard enough. He fined the EFCC 500,000 naira for the delay, a public sanction against the prosecuting body in a case of this magnitude. He described the adjournment he was granting as final. And then, when the 13th witness eventually testified, police testimony confirmed how the alleged fraud was executed, while stopping short of directly naming the person who ordered it. The trial has since been adjourned to July 2nd and 3rd, 2026, for continuation. Emefiele continues to maintain his not guilty plea. His legal team continues to challenge the prosecution's approach at every stage. This case is still open. What this case means, there are 2 things this case represents, and they exist at the same time. The first, accountability. The fact that a man who served at the absolute peak of Nigeria's economic infrastructure, with power over the naira, over foreign reserves, over every commercial bank in the country, is sitting in a courtroom answering charges is not nothing. That is the system working. Slowly, imperfectly, but working. The second, the pace problem. This case began in 2023. We are now in 2026. The EFCC has been fined for delays. Witnesses have been absent. Adjournments have exceeded legal limits. And Nigeria, and the world, is watching to see whether the conclusion of this trial will match the ambition of its charges. Because the real message this case sends is not determined by the arrest. It is determined by the verdict. When the most powerful, unelected economic figure in Africa's largest economy faces justice, the outcome tells every institution, every future office holder, every person who moves public funds, what the consequences actually are. That verdict is still coming. Africlor will be here when it does, and you can miss it. $6.23 million allegedly taken from Nigeria's central bank, disguised as payment for election observers who never existed, forged signatures of a president and his senior minister, if proven. 1.2 billion naira in alleged procurement fraud, 2018 to 2020. $2.045 million in cash and properties recovered. 20 counts. 12 prosecution witnesses down. Trial ongoing. The man who controlled Nigeria's money is answering for how he used that control. We will follow this case until it concludes. If you want Africlor to cover the verdict when it drops, subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. Because when that ruling comes, you don't want to miss it.